So again, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to our Security Plus session. And today's session, we will discuss about implementing network security. And we have 4 topics to discuss. The first one is about configured network security technologies. Let me just mute all. The second one is about secure network design elements. And then we have implement secure networking protocols and services. And then finally, we'll discuss secure wireless traffic, okay? Yeah, so let's have a look at the network components. Here we have different components, like we have the device, which is any piece of hardware. Could be your computer, server, printer, smartphone, yeah. These are known as device or devices, yeah. And then we have the media, which connects devices to the network and carries data between devices. Like, for example, your USB flash disk, CD-ROM, I mean the actual CD, yeah. And we have the network adapter, which is the hardware that translates data between the network and the device. So you may have the the PC that is equipped with the network adapter or network card. And by default, if you're using like a laptop, you will have like the wireless network, what do you call this, card built in, or even using your USB wireless card, yeah. And then we have the network operating system, which is the software that controls network traffic and access to network resources. Yeah, your Windows, your Linux, your Mac are the examples of this network operating system. They are capable of providing controls to the network traffic, and of course, access network resources on your network. And then we have the protocol, which is the software that controls network communication using a set of rules. So these are just some examples of the network devices. You have router, we have the firewall, proxy, switch, and load balancer. Now, for the exam, if you're going to take the exam, make sure that you understand the use of each network device, such as, for example, what is the purpose or the function of a router? Yeah. That's why they call it a router, because it has the function of routing the packet, yeah, from one network to other network or different network. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the devices. We'll look at the routers. A router, in fact, is a device that connects multiple networks that use the same protocol. And normally, we use router to forward the traffic from one network to different network. Yeah, and remember that most routers will not forward broadcast traffic, which means that they can forward the traffic, but unicast traffic, which is actually the traffic intended to be for one particular recipient. Yeah, broadcasting meaning one to many recipient. And then we have the access control list, which is which can be implemented in on your router, yeah, to block or allow the traffic. This is called ACL. You can actually configure your router to use the ACL. Yeah. It will allow you to filter inbound or outbound traffic depending on your rules. Yeah, so for those who are not very familiar with routers, you can actually do some reading about the devices, and if you want to play around with your virtual router, you can use several software such as GNS3 or Packet Tracer used by the Cisco students. Yeah. So then we have switches. A switch is a device with multiple network ports that combines multiple physical network segments into a single logical network. And most commonly, switch can be pre-configured to do the forwarding. To do the what do you call this? The packet. What do you call this? Processing. And they normally stores the information about the MAC address of every single workstation or host connected to it. Yeah, and you can actually use several security protection provided by the switches, such as the MAC address protection. Yeah. That can limit access to specific hosts based on MAC address. This is called MAC address filtering. Can implement flood guards against denial of service attack, and also implement loop prevention to shut down network loop. For example, they use a lot of switches, especially modern switches. They implement the loop prevention by using the STP or spanning tree protocol. And then we have proxies, a device that acts on the behalf of one end of the network connection when communicating with others. Yeah, so you can actually use proxy to speed up the process of connecting to the target hosts. Used as a way to filter content, forward proxy intercept client traffic before it leaves the network. And you can actually modify traffic and just forward it. Yeah. Reverse proxy will intercept traffic coming from external network and intended to protect destination server from compromise. And some proxies are they are actually multi-purpose proxy, which allows you to have the application level awareness. Yeah. Firewall is a device that protects system or network by blocking unwanted traffic. So you basically use firewall to filter the traffic incoming and inbound and outbound traffic. And you can, by default, firewall has the implicit deny, which is the mode in which all traffic one way is blocked unless explicitly allowed. So deny all with exception. Yeah. So you can configure the rules to block specific traffic. And of course, you will have the log for monitoring purposes. And there are different types of firewall. We have the host-based firewall, like for example, Windows 10. Actually, since Windows XP, we have the Windows firewall. We have this host-based, yeah, Windows firewall, network-based, like different type of firewall, like maybe. For example, if I use like Bitdefender, I will have the network-based firewall that allows me to block or what do you call this? Follow the traffic which one to block, as well as a web-based application firewall, or WAF, web application firewall. So basically, any type of firewall that protects a system or network by blocking unwanted traffic, like for example, only allows port 80 and 443 would be considered as a firewall. Yeah. Then we also have load balancer, which is a device that distributes workload among multiple devices in a network. And all devices will be performed more efficiently, and also allows you to protect your network against distributed denial of service attack. And you can do, you can configure how load balancer will determine to route the traffic. Yeah, you can have like round robin, a scheduling approach, in which the load balancer forwards traffic to each server on a list one by one, or using affinity, which is a scheduling approach in which the load balancer forwards traffic to a server a client is already connected to. So that's how load balancer actually work. It distributes workload among multiple devices. Like for example, when you have like 5 or maybe 3 or more servers, web servers, you can have the load balancer that will distribute the workload among your web servers. And for the analysis, you can use the network scanners like packet analyzer, like Wireshark. Wireshark is the most commonly used packet analyzer or tool that will allow you to capture traffic data. And you can also use protocol analyzer that will allow you to capture the traffic, and of course can be used to reveal malicious traffic using specific factors. And then we have the network enumerator, which is a logical topology of the network to reveal connection pathway. Yeah. So different tools will be discussed here. And we also need to know how to actually use the tool in our next lesson. Yeah. Okay. Just give me a minute. Okay, then how about intrusion detection system? Yeah. So intrusion detection system is a system that scans, evaluate, and monitor computer infrastructure for signs of an attack in progress. So you can analyze data and get the alert based on the issues. Can include hardware sensor, intrusion detection software, as well as management software. Yeah. And each implementation is unique and depends on organization's security needs. You may have something called network IDS. This is a type of IDS that is primarily used to or to monitor traffic. A passive hardware sensor, it will monitor, allows you to monitor the traffic on a specific segment. Yeah. And allows you to snip the traffic and send alerts. And normally uses would be like a rogue system detection or unauthorized system detection, reconnaissance, and attack pattern identification. Yeah, like for example, it allows you to detect any possible SYNC flood. Yeah. Okay. Let me open up my browser. So okay, so yeah, you can see that I'm showing you a typical network topology for asset management. This is just an example of where you can actually set up a router or something like that, or even a very complex, yeah, this is a very complex topology that actually shows you the diagram. Yeah, so for example here, yeah, oh, not really good. So anyway, so you may have like this kind of topology that actually shows you complete sets of the yeah. So for example here, you can have this kind of topology that will allow you to have, like your router, your yeah, earlier I'm showing you this. Yeah. So this is how you design your topology, where you can have your router, your firewall, and then you have the workstation and so on. So depending on how you design your topology. Yeah. Yeah. So you may have like intrusion detection system being placed in your network to monitor any traffic on your network segment. Yeah, and also the intrusion prevention systems, or also known as the IPS, a system that perform the function of the IDS that can also take action to block threats. So the difference between intrusion detection system and intrusion prevention system is that intrusion detection system is primarily used to lock the what do you call this, the hacker's action, for example, or the to lock these malicious activities, while intrusion prevention system, or IPS, will allow you to block the threats immediately, depending on the rules that you have set, or depending on the rules, pre-configured rules set in the IPS, or on the IPS. Yeah. So you can configure the threat that should be handled automatically, useful, but of course there are some weaknesses, like false positive may lead to the blocking of legitimate behavior, and false negative may lull you into false sense of security. So a well-managed and finely tuned IPS still powerful defense option. So it is actually required to have at least one intrusion prevention system in your network. Yeah. And you can implement this, a network IPS, a type of IPS that can detect suspicious traffic on a network and move to block it. Yeah. So blocking involves dropping unwanted packets or resetting the connection, and you can use network IPS to regulate traffic according to specific content. Like, for example, you can only block based on, for example, content that has certain things. Of course, you need to make sure that the content here is not based on, or I would say that intrusion prevention system is different than stateless firewall, which only blocks based on addresses and ports. And IPS can block based on specific content, like, for example, sync flood content, malicious software content or malware content, and so on and so forth. Yeah. And the types of network monitoring systems could be based on signature. So you have the signature base, predefined set based on a predefined set of rules. And then we have the anomaly base, which is depending on the patterns. Then we have the behavior base, detects if future behavior deviates from the norm. Yeah, so behavior meaning that we need to, behavior base here, we need to have a baseline that will allow you to detect any deviation or any difference from the normal operations. And we also have the heuristic, yeah, which identifies the entry based on specific environment. Yeah. And beside those IDS, IPS, firewall, proxy, we also have what they call as the SIEM, Security Information and Event Management, also known as SIEM. Yeah. A security solution that provide real-time or near real-time analysis of security alerts generated by network, hardware, and application. Yeah, you can actually use this to really support your IDS and IPS. This SIM will be used as a centralized, management that will allow you to aggregate the logs, do the threat management, yeah, alerting, synchronization, and other features. Yeah. So one of the things that you can actually use is this one. Yeah, you can use like Alien Vault. Yeah, you can use you can actually install the open source SIM. Yeah, you can use this Alien Vault. So we have the product called Alien Vault. Yeah, let me just check. Yeah, here. So Alien Vault. Now it's already part of AT&T. Yeah. And you can download the Alien Vault OSIM, which is actually the free version of the Alien Vault SIEM. Yeah. OSIM stands for the open source SIEM. Yeah. Or you can also use something like this one, Wazoo. Yeah, Wazoo is also another open source SIEM that allows you to do a lot of things here. Security analytics, intrusion detection, log data analysis, file integrity monitoring, vulnerability detection, configuration assessment, incident response, regulatory compliance, cloud security, as well as containers. Yeah. I used to have this, I used to play this Alien Vault OSIM, and it is quite a good tool that will allow you to integrate, your IDS, for example, Snort IDS, yeah, and even other type of what do you call this security appliances. Okay. Now let's get back to this one. Yeah. And the other thing that needs to be also put in place is this one, data loss or data leak prevention, a solution that detects and prevents sensitive info from being stolen or falling into the wrong hands. So it allows you to monitor data to stop unauthorized destruction. For example, you can, block any confidential files sent through email, or even block the transmission, as well as blocking USB port from being written or from being used, and block certain file from being written to the USB file. Yeah. And VPN is also another method that allows you to extend private network by tunneling throughout a public network like the internet. So normally VPN or virtual private networks are being utilized to create secure connections between endpoints, and allows you to encrypt your data throughout the tunnel. So you can actually combine the IPSec, with the VPN protocol that allows you to fully encrypt the data or the traffic. And you can also use the VPN Concentrator. Is a single device that incorporates advanced encryption and authentication methods to handle a large number of VPN clients. So if you have VPN tunnels. So if you have multiple or large number of VPN tunnels, you can actually take advantage of the VPN concentrators that will allow you to accommodate remote access or site-to-site, or you can even have extra capabilities and support tunneling protocols such as IPSec or IPSec, site-to-site, and SSL or TLS for remote access. Yeah. So basically, you can use the VPN and VPN concentrators to connect to a private server on your data center, or different site, and then all communication will be fully encrypted. Yeah. We also have another device called security gateways, which is normally controls applied to inbound and outbound network traffic. And a different control will be applied or can be applied. Like, for example, you can configure a server to be a mail gateway that will do the filtering on spam, DLP, as well as ensuring confidentiality and integrity by applying encryption. So that particular mail gateway may have multiple features that allow you to block the unknown spam, as well as preventing people on leaking the sensitive information outside of the network. And security control can apply to more than just email traffic, such as streaming medias and some other type of data. Yeah. And we also have other device called Unified Threat Management, which is a system that centralizes different type of security techniques into a single appliance. Yeah. So of course, because it is a single appliance, it might be quite expensive, and but of course the complexity would be different with for different organization depending on your requirements. Yeah, you can actually streamline security process to make it easier by implementing UTM or Unified Threat Management. So basically, it's a centralized system that allows you to use different techniques. For example, as a single point of failure, as well as for the what do you call this concentrator, as well as antivirus and intrusion detection system / intrusion prevention system. Downsides include single point of failure on a network, because you purely 100% rely on this particular Unified Threat Management. Yeah, and you can struggle with network latency issues because everything will be filtered on that particular UTM only. Yeah. Now, recap guidelines for configuring network security technologies. Make sure that you understand different types of network devices and their security concern, and understand different tools that will allow you to scan as well as analyze your network. And then you also need to understand about SIEM, which is normally used to aggregate the events and correlation, provide you the better solution for continuous monitoring, as well as the use of the DLP and VPN plus VPN concentrator, then UTM, which is used to provide what do you call this, a centralized or unified threat management that will allow you to detect malicious activities. Okay, so we'll skip the activity, nothing much. You can configure firewall. The easiest way to configure your firewall is to configure your Windows 10. You can try to do some adjustment on your Windows firewall, like for example, allowing or disallowing application through a specific port. Yeah. And for the IDS, if you want to practice with the IDS, you can actually use Snort. Snort is free. So you can configure your IDS to detect several, malicious activities. Yeah. And then beside that, we have the network access control, which is collective protocols, policy, and hardware that govern access on the device interconnection. Yeah. So we normally use the network access control that will check the minimum security for every single connection, and can be deployed based on 3 main elements like authentication method, endpoint vulnerability assessment, and network security enforcement. So basically, it provides a layer of security that will check whether a connected device like your laptop or workstation has conformed to a particular policy. And if they do not actually conform the policy, it will do the quarantine. Yeah. So it could be like agent and agentless. Agent means that you need to install a specific agent or software on the device, while you can also use the agentless for scanning only, yeah, without agent software. Yeah. And then of course, you also need to understand about the DMZ, or also known as screen subnet, yeah, as a section of private network made available for public access. And normally we have several servers being placed in this in this DMZ. Like for example, you may have like several web servers, DNS server, as well as mail server in a DMZ, while for the private related servers like SQL injection, SQL server, or maybe like any database server and application server, those should be placed in a private network, which is shown on the left side here. Yeah, so DMZ is on the right side. That is actually set to allow public access, while on the left side, you can see the private network that should store or should place, non-publicly available servers. And then you can also do network isolation by doing segregation, like using VLAN. Yeah, the practice of keeping networks separate from one another. Yeah, you can use the VLAN, virtual LAN, and also other things like subnetting or segmentation, which is the practice of dividing network into multiple subnets or smaller segments, and the air gap, which is the isolation practice of physical separating network from all other network, which is called air gap. The main objective of network isolation is that the attackers will not easily or cannot easily move from segment to segment because we provide the limited areas to be explored. Segmentation can be achieved through several means, including physical segmentation. Yeah. Remember that VLAN is a logical segmentation. Subnetting is also logical segmentation. While for the physical, you have to really use air gap, which is physically separating the network from all other network. Yeah, that's actually the air gap. Yeah. So this is something called the VLAN, where you split the network into a finance subnet and marketing subnet, and they won't be able to talk to each other. Yeah. Okay, so so this is the one I mentioned, virtual local area network, or VLAN, a logical method for segmenting the network at the data link layer. Yeah. So very similar to subnet, and you can actually configure this on a physical switch. Yeah. Yeah. So something like this. This is the VLAN. Yeah. Which is almost the same as this segmentation using subnetting. Yeah. While VLAN, in VLAN, you need to configure a switch to create multiple VLANs and then do not allow them to communicate with each other. Yeah. And for network security device placement, you can have like aggregation switches, firewall, proxies, filters, yeah, and filters, load balancers, taps, collectors, and correlation engine, as well as concentrators. So please do some reading on the recommended placement. Like, for example, where should you place the proxies and filters? Like, for example, here, usually placed close to the network perimeter. And then we have like load balancer placed in the DMZ before web server to handle access to traffic, as well as other type of devices. So one of the easiest way is to look at this type of network topology diagram. Yeah. Let me find a nice network topology diagram that will allow you to understand the network. Yeah. Yeah, you can have something like this. Yeah, anyway, you can find different examples of network topology. Yeah, like this one. Yeah. Then we have the NAT, which is network address translation, which is a service that translates between different IP addressing schemes, such as between public facing and private IP addresses. Yeah. Then we have the software-defined networking, or SDN, which is a network design approach that separates network control system from traffic forwarding the systems. Yeah. So here the admin can directly program control system by themselves. Yeah, so these are some guidelines for securing network design. Yeah, you can use the NAC solution, the DMZ, and the VLAN, as well as the NAT. So please do more reading on NAC, DMZ, VLAN, and NAT, as well as the software-defined network. Yeah. Okay, so just some examples of load balancer placement, where you place the load balancer between the DMZ and the internal network. Yeah, pay attention to this one. In the exam, you may be asked about the placement. You know, where should you actually place your load balancer, your routers, your firewalls, your IDSs, and so on. So this is another placement where you use the or you place a load balancer between the firewall and your DMZ before going into the internal network. And then there's another balancer placement where you place the load balancer after the web server and between the two firewalls. Yeah. And another one is load balancer being placed after the internet, yeah, before the internal firewall on a DMZ. Yeah. And for the basics, please do some reading about the open system interconnection model, which provide you the layered protocols and approaches. Yeah. So basically, the model you can be utilized to explains about the hardware, the software, and how they can interconnect. Right? So starting from the physical layer, data link layer, network layer, transport layer, session layer, presentation, and application. I normally use the abbreviation, yeah, or maybe something that can easily be remembered, yeah, or memorized. Like for example, from layer 1 to layer 7, like people do not. Yeah, so people do not need to see Paula Abdul, or maybe like from layer 7 application to layer 1, like all people seems to need data processing. So APSTNDP. Yeah, and of course, understanding the layers makes it easier to identify threats on a target. Yeah. And can also help you to secure network by layers. And here, each of the layer will allow you to understand how they interconnect with each other. And beside that, we also have the TCP/IP, which is a native protocol suite. Yeah, so you should actually learn this in the previous lesson, or maybe like in a network class or CCNA, that tells you about the IP version 4, 32-bit numbers assigned to computer on the TCP network. You can have the IPv6, which is the what do you call this? The new version of the IP, 128-bit address space. IPv6 was actually created to have, or I would say to provide more address space, because IP version 4 only only contains limited numbers of addresses for hosts. And you can also learn about the HTTP, which is the automatic assignment of IP addressing using the HTTP on a router or even on a server. Okay, then we have the DNS, the domain name system, which is normally used to provide name resolution to translate name to IP. Yeah, and IP to name. Yeah. DNS is a hierarchical system or databases that maps computer names to IP addresses. Yeah. And then we also have the HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which is the TCP protocol that enables client to connect to and interact with website. Yeah. Then we have the secure socket layer, SSL, TLS, which combines digital certificate for authentication, and you can have like accelerator, which is the hardware device that can often offload encryption calculation from the server. So you can, most commonly when you type HTTPS, when you're actually using HTTPS, it is actually a combination of the application layer, HTTP, plus SSL or TLS. Yeah. So normally this is how it actually works. When you try to request, when a user tries to request a secure connection, this server will actually send certificate and they will later on negotiate the encryption with in a secure manner. Yeah. So you can use the HTTP secure HTTPS, yeah, which is the version that supports encrypted communication between client and the server. And we also have the secure shell or SSH, which is the protocol used in secure remote access and secure transfer of the data. Then we have the SNMP, which is a service used to collect information from network devices for diagnostic purposes, diagnostic and maintenance purposes. Yeah, so you can use the latest SNMP version 3 that adds encryptions to it. Yeah. Then beside that, we have real-time transport protocol, which provides audio and video streaming media over TCP/IP network. Then ICMP, which is normally used when you're doing the pinging, yeah, or when you type ping to check for the target host for the response, you are actually using the Internet Control Message Protocol or ICMP. And of course, ICMP can be used to do the attack, like for example, what happened to the Smurf, yeah, attack, and can be reconfigured to forge packet, yeah. And then we also have the IPSec, which is the set of open standard protocol used to secure data. And they have, different, methods of encryption through the authentication header, which provide authentication, integrity, and anti-reply. While if you're using the ESP, encapsulation security payload, it will do the full encryption. This is actually used for confidentiality. Then we have the network basic input-output system or NetBIOS use. This is a service that enables application to properly communicate over different computers in a network. And the rest of other transfer protocol like FTP, SFTP, TFTP, FTP over SSH, and SCP plus FTPS. Some of these protocols are, not secure. Like FTP is not secure, while SFTP is a secure way of doing the FTP. Yeah. The rest are about email protocols such as POP3, yeah, Post Office Protocol, very old one, Internet Message Access Protocol, IMAP. And we also have the MIME, yeah, Multi-Purpose Internet Mail Extension, as well as Secure Multi-Purpose Internet Mail Extension. Multi-purpose internet mail extension and secure multi-purpose are, equipped with the encryption, but only secure multi-purpose provide full encryption for digital signature. Yeah. Additional networking protocols and services include telephony, routing and switching, such as RIP, IGRP, EIGRP, the implementation of the RIPs. Then we have the time synchronization protocol, known as the NTP, Network Time Protocol, and subscription, which is the examples of the RSS, yeah. Or the RSS is actually the examples of the subscription. Yeah. And in Security Plus, you also need to understand how ports are being used, the endpoint of logical network connection, and normally client will connect to the server through designated ports. Like for example, these are some of the most commonly used ports, 21, 22, 21 for FTP, 22 for SSH, and so on and so forth. Yeah. And the yeah, try to do more reading on different type of different ports and the associated service or services. Yeah. Okay. I'll skip the activity. Yeah. You can try to do a very simple IPSec activity by using your Windows 10. Yeah, so you can configure like IPSec to accept the connection from one computer with another computer. Yeah, try to get some information from YouTube on how to actually configure the IPSec to allow you to connect securely with different client or even server. Yeah. And the last part here is about wireless network. You know about the network, so I won't really explain about this. So basically a network that do not rely entirely on physical cabling and is transmitted throughout invisible radio waves. And advantages: portability, reducing costs on cabling, and use less physical space. And then for the wireless antenna, we have different types like omnidirectional and directional, and antenna type like the rubber duck, ceiling dome, and so on. You can find the example of for example, Yagi antenna or parabolic antenna. Let me just give you an example of Yagi. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, you can see the examples of Yagi antenna. Yeah. You can also find parabolic antenna. Yeah. Something like this. Yeah. Something like this or this. Yeah. And maybe like a rubber duck. You can just type antenna. Yeah. Very simple one. Yeah. And for the antenna, you will need to choose the correct antenna. So for example, if you want to do the wireless hacking, you will need to get, a good USB wireless card that will that is supported by, for example, Kali. Yeah. So yeah, for the antenna, try to find something like this. Let me just show you the example. Wi-Fi antenna. Yeah, so you can get something like this, or maybe a TP-Link product. Yeah, like for example, this one, TP-Link WN722N, yeah, which is shown here. Yeah, this is one of the cheapest Wi-Fi USB adapter that you can use to do wireless hacking. Yeah, yeah, here. So this is the one. Yeah. So this is Wi-Fi antenna TP-Link that can help you on doing the hacking. Yeah, Wi-Fi hacking. And yeah, so you also need to understand different type of wireless communication protocol used for the 802.11 for the wireless. I mean, starting from the 802.11a up to AC, the latest ones that supports up to 1,300 Mbps and has a wider 5 gigahertz channel. Yeah, the older one was actually G and N that only support up to 600 Mbps. And for the cryptographic protocol, the older version was the WEP, provide encryption using RC4 algorithm and deprecated due to the weak IV. Yeah, you can easily crack this WEP wireless within 20 seconds. And then followed by WPA, which provide dynamic reassignment of the key, meant to actually fix the problem with the WEP. And the latest one was actually the latest one is actually the WPA, which improved WPA to implement all mandatory components and uses the CCMP that improve on TKIP, or the temporal key assignment protocol. Yeah. And the remaining protocols are EAP, which is normally used for authentication. You can have like EAP TLS, TTLS, LEAP, and FAST. And for the centralized authentication, you can use IEEE 802.1x, which support the encapsulation of EAP over LAN, wireless, as well as provide base authentication, port-based authentication. Then PAP, which is the developed by Cisco, yeah, as well as the Radius Federation, which is the network authentication protocol. So do some reading on different type of wireless authentication protocol, because they will be tested. All of these are tested in your exam. Yeah. And you may have like VPN that allows you to connect to the wireless network, so you can actually connect through a VPN, and then allows you to also encrypt data throughout the VPN tunnel. Yeah. And authentication methods supported by your client include WPA or WPA2 personal, which is normally used for an individual, known also as the PSK. And then WPA2 enterprise, which is normally utilizing Radius server 802.1x based, and then which helps to mitigate brute force and good for larger network. And if you want to get like a very simple authentication, you can use the WPS, yeah, Wi-Fi protected. WPS was actually the wireless protected something. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Apologize for earlier one. I was not able to show my browser, but anyway, you can see my browser again. Yeah. So this one, it was I was showing you the different type of antenna. Just an example. Yeah. Wi-Fi. Let's say antenna like rubber duck. Yeah, this is the rubber duck antenna. So we also have the parabolic antenna. Yeah, this is the parabolic antenna, as well as Yagi. Yeah, this is Yagi. Yeah, or this one. Okay. And for the wireless access point security, you can use different combination of methods. Like you can do like MAC filtering, only allows or disallows certain MAC addresses, and then you can disable SSID. Yeah, not to broadcast the SSID, you have to manually, the user will need to enter the SSID manually, and then you can configure the signal, like you only allow 5 gigahertz over 2.4 gigahertz, and you can decide between fat and thin AP, which is normally used to to take advantage of the 802.1x authentication to radio server. Yeah. And you can also use the captive portal, which is a technique requiring client connecting to wireless network to authenticate through a web page. Like for example, the Wi-Fi used in the airport. Yeah, you can see that when you're about to connect, you will need to click connect and even enter your phone number and so on. that is called captive portal. Yeah. And you can do site survey, which is a collection of information on location for the purpose of constructing something in the best possible way. So site survey is normally conducted to, you know, to look at the area where the signal will be, what do you call this, will be surveyed. Yeah, will be, I mean, this is actually more about coverage, yeah, the coverage of your Wi-Fi signal. You might need to place your access point in a central location to avoid people being able to connect to your wireless network if they are actually outside. Yeah. And some guidelines for securing wireless traffic. So one of the best way to use is the WPA2 encryption. If you want to use the combination of VPN and Wi-Fi as well as the LAN, you can use 802.1x, yeah, which provide the AAA authentication, authorization, and auditing. And you can use the WPA2 Enterprise for a large corporate environment, and try to disable WPS. Rather, you should actually, I would suggest that you use the WPA PSK rather than the built-in feature of your access point, which is WPS. And then you could disable SSID, but it will not actually protect your network. Someone can easily sniff the network by using, you know, different tools, like for example Kismet, that allows you to or that allows the attacker to see the SSID even though the SSID are not or is not broadcasted. Yeah. So you can use a site survey to determine the optimal device placement, and use captive portal if you want to have more control over who can actually log on to your Wi-Fi. All right. So yeah. For the activity, if you have your own access point or your own USB dongle or USB Wi-Fi, you can try to use different tools, yeah, that will allow you to capture the traffic. Yeah, one way is to use the yeah, you can use this tool, Kismet, that allows you to you know, this is Kismet, yeah, not the shape. So this is Kismet. Kismet is a tool that will allow you to monitor the network traffic and even, you know, view the hidden, what do you call this, SSID. And we can also use the vStumbler that will allow you to scan for your wireless. Yeah. So this is the vStumbler. Yeah. So if you type vStumbler, you can see several images showing you the traffic. Yeah. So something like this. Yeah. Yeah. So vStumbler is a software that runs on Windows, while Kismet runs on Linux, right? Okay, so that's for today. Yeah, let me unmute this. Any question, guys? Any question? Hello, 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 guys. Any question? Any question? Any question? Okay, so if no question, thank you very much for your kind attention. And this is the end of our session today, and see you next time in another session.